My family gave my brother a house and me a lottery ticket. I won $134 million. I grew up knowing one simple rule in my family. My older brother Jason got the best of everything, and I got whatever was left over. It wasn't even something I questioned. That's just how things were. I still remember the Christmas when Jason unwrapped a brand new PlayStation, the hottest gift of the moment. The excitement on his face, the way my parents beamed with pride. It was as if he'd won the grand prize. I, on the other hand, received a t-shirt from a clearance rack at Walmart, one size too big with a local plumbing company's logo on it. I was 7 years old, and even then, I knew it was better not to complain. Be grateful, my mother always said. Jason is older. He needs more. So I smiled, told her I loved the shirt, and watched my brother disappear into his room to enjoy his new console. Later, I sat on the couch watching reruns of old sitcoms, pretending I didn't care. That was the pattern for everything. Jason received a brand new car when he turned 16, a shiny silver Honda Civic with a big red bow on the hood. I received a used bicycle with a flat tire and the promise that it's good exercise. He received a fully paid college education, while I received a stack of financial aid forms and a motivational speech about learning responsibility. I didn't even feel jealous at the time. It was simply my reality. I adapted. I worked hard, made do with what I had, and convinced myself it built character. Our house was the classic American middle-class home, a modest 2-story house with vinyl siding, a basketball hoop over the garage, and a refrigerator covered with Jason's honor roll certificates. Mom loved making casseroles with recipes she found on Pinterest, and Dad was the king of backyard barbecues when the weather allowed. I remember summer weekends when Jason invited his friends to swim in the neighbor's above-ground pool while I mowed the lawn. "You're a team player," Dad would say, handing me a lukewarm can of generic soda as a reward. And then came the moment that should have shattered any illusion of fairness. Jason graduated from college. My parents threw him a huge party. They rented an elegant venue, hired a DJ, and even had a custom cake shaped like a diploma. Over 100 people showed up, including relatives I didn't even know he had. My mother kept repeating, "This is what hard work looks like." At the end of the night, they handed him the keys to his new house, a beautiful newly built home in a quiet suburb, completely paid for. "We're so proud of you," they said. "You deserve this." A year later, I also graduated from college. No party, no big celebration, just a quiet dinner at a chain restaurant where my parents handed me a single white envelope. I opened it, expecting maybe a check to help with my student loans. Instead, inside was a lottery ticket. "We thought this would be fun," my mother said, smiling. "You never know, you might win the jackpot." I waited for the punchline, some kind of joke, but no, that was it. My entire graduation gift was a $2 scratch-off lottery ticket. When I looked at my father, he simply shrugged. "Well, you know, we spent a lot on Jason's house." I laughed, a real, genuine laugh, because honestly, what else could I do? "I guess my only chance of getting something good is winning the jackpot," I said, holding up the ticket. No one disagreed, and that's where it all began. I sat on my old secondhand couch in my tiny studio apartment, staring at the lottery ticket on the coffee table. The same ticket my parents gave me for graduating from college. It wasn't even scratched yet. I hadn't touched it since that night. It just sat there, mocking me with the promise of a jackpot I knew I'd never win. I tried not to get angry. I really did. For weeks, I dismissed it as just another family quirk. My parents had their favorites, and I simply wasn't one of them. No big deal, I told myself. I didn't need gifts or recognition. I was an adult now, independent. I could make my own way in the world. But the more I thought about it, the more that bitter feeling settled in my chest. My friends didn't help. When I told them about the lottery ticket, they were outraged. "Dude," said my friend Chris, "that's not just favoritism. It's total disrespect. They gave your brother a house. A house? And you got a ticket? That's insane." Hearing someone else say it out loud made it worse. I spent nights awake, replaying every moment I'd been an afterthought. The clearance rack t-shirts, the bicycle with the flat tire, college tuition I had to scrape together while Jason got everything handed to him on a silver platter. I wasn't just bitter. I felt like a fool for pretending it didn't matter. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront my parents or have some dramatic showdown. That would be pointless. They'd just tell me I was overreacting or being too sensitive. No, I decided to distance myself quietly. I found a job at a small marketing company and signed a lease for a small one-bedroom apartment downtown. The place was tiny, with outdated appliances and neighbors who held karaoke sessions late at night through paper-thin walls. But it was mine. No handouts, no strings attached. My parents didn't even seem to notice the change. Jason, on the other hand, kept inviting me to his house, the house our parents bought him. Every time I visited, I felt like I was entering a shrine dedicated to his success. The walls were adorned with photos of Jason in his cap and gown, posing with his new car, cutting the ribbon in front of his new house. "Se você está gastando dessa historia incrível example, Neo esquiste Dixer SCU, like Aqui Embexo. Imicana nos comentarios. Você já passou por alguma situação de favoritismo na família? Vamos conversar. My parents were always there too, lounging on the couch or admiring the latest renovation. Isn't this backsplash gorgeous? Mom said once, running her hand over the subway tiles in Jason's kitchen. We helped him pick it out. We're so proud of our boy. I stood there, nodding politely, while a voice in my head whispered, "He'll never say that about you." The longer I spent in that house, the more invisible I felt. Conversations revolved around Jason's job, Jason's hobbies, Jason's future plans. If I mentioned anything about my life, a project at work, a funny story about my noisy neighbors, they'd smile vaguely and then return to Jason's latest achievement. One night, after another dinner where I sat like a spectator at the Jason show, I went home and opened the junk drawer in my kitchen. There it was, a lottery ticket. I picked it up, turned it over in my hands. The odds of winning were printed in small letters on the back, 1 in 300 million. I almost threw it away, but instead, I dropped it back into the drawer and slammed it shut. That night, lying in bed, I realized something. I'd spent my whole life waiting for my parents to see me the way they saw Jason. But maybe it was time to stop playing a game I was never meant to win. The next morning, I woke up and made coffee in my old, noisy drip coffee maker. I stood by the window, watching the city come to life below, cars honking, dog walkers rushing, the smell of burnt toast coming from my neighbor's kitchen. I grabbed my phone and looked at the family group chat. Jason had sent another photo, new patio furniture. Check this out. Mom and Dad responded with heart emojis and, "We're so proud of you." I typed a response and deleted it. Instead, I left the chat and tossed my phone on the couch. Enough was enough. I didn't need their validation anymore. I was done waiting for permission to matter. The ticket stayed in the drawer, untouched, and life went on. For now, time passed, and life settled into a relentless routine. I worked 2 jobs just to cover rent on my small, outdated apartment. Mornings started at the marketing company, where I spent hours creating campaigns for local businesses, usually involving cheesy slogans and stock photos of smiling families. Evenings were reserved for a job at a diner, where I wore a grease-stained apron and served burgers and shakes to high school students who left sticky fingerprints on the menus. Meanwhile, Jason cruised around town in his new SUV, the one Mom and Dad gave him for his hard work. The guy didn't even have a job. He was exploring his options, which apparently meant playing golf with Dad, trying expensive hobbies, and planning weekend getaways with his fiancée, Amanda. Yes, Jason was engaged. I found out the same way I found out about everything in my family, through the family group chat. One day, amid the usual stream of photos of Jason's latest home improvement and Mom's casseroles, a photo appeared of Amanda showing off a diamond ring the size of a Skittle candy. The caption read, "She said yes. We're so proud of our boy." No call, no text message, just another photo on the digital altar of Jason's success. I shrugged and went back to work, flipping pancakes for a couple of truckers debating the best barbecue joints in the state. But that nagging feeling persisted. It was like an itch I couldn't scratch. My family had always favored Jason, but this felt like more than favoritism. It felt like a deliberate reminder that I didn't matter. The official announcement came 2 weeks later when Mom invited me to a family dinner. "We want to catch up," she said. "We haven't seen you in ages." The last time we'd seen each other was at Jason's housewarming party 6 months ago. I arrived at Jason's house at 6 p.m. sharp, carrying a bottle of wine I really couldn't afford. Mom opened the door, gushing about the new living room decor. "Look at that accent wall. We helped Jason pick the color. Isn't it sophisticated?" The evening unfolded like any other family gathering. Dad talked about Jason's future plans. Mom showed photos of Amanda's engagement ring to anyone who would listen. Jason joked about how stressful wedding planning was. I sat there, chewing dry chicken and nodding at the right moments, waiting for the real reason they'd invited me. Finally, Mom cleared her throat and tapped her wine glass with a spoon. "We have exciting news," she said, beaming. "Jason and Amanda have set a wedding date, and we're thrilled to help them with everything." Everything turned out to mean a luxury venue, covering catering costs, and buying Amanda a custom wedding dress. They'd even offered to pay for a 2-week honeymoon in Hawaii. "We just want to give them the wedding of their dreams," Mom said. I sat there, gripping my fork, trying to keep my expression neutral, but the words came out before I could stop them. "And do you ever plan to help me with anything?" Silence, the kind that makes your ears ring. Jason shifted in his seat. Dad coughed into his napkin. Mom's smile faltered. "Well, honey," she said, her voice full of condescension, "no one's stopping you from working harder." I laughed, a short, bitter sound that even surprised me. "Sure," I said, "because 2 jobs aren't enough." Mom opened her mouth to respond, but I didn't wait to hear what came next. I stood up, dropped my napkin on the plate, and walked out the door. A fresh night air hit me like a slap as I stood on the sidewalk, breathing hard. My phone buzzed in my pocket with messages from the family chat. I didn't look. I just blocked the group and turned off my phone. That was it. The last straw. I was done trying to be part of a family that treated me like an afterthought. The lottery ticket was still in my drawer at home, untouched. As I walked to my car, one thought kept spinning in my head. I had no idea how, but I was going to find a way to win, and it wasn't going to be with a scratch-off ticket. The next morning, I stopped at a local diner for breakfast. The waitress poured me a cup of coffee and gave me me a sympathetic smile when I muttered something about family. Family, huh? She said, setting down the bill. They sure know how to hit you where it hurts. I chuckled and left a generous tip as I left. I felt lighter somehow. Maybe I couldn't change my family, but I could finally start living for myself. And I was just getting started. Months passed, and life settled into a comfortable, albeit exhausting, routine. I juggled my 2 jobs, paid my bills on time, and even got to know my neighbors a bit better. The elderly lady across the hall, Mrs. Thompson, always baked cookies when her grandchildren visited and made sure to give me a plate. You look like you need some sugar, dear, she'd say. The guy downstairs, Dan, had a habit of playing country music at full volume at midnight, but he always apologized the next day with a 6-pack of cheap beer. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. One Saturday morning, I decided to tackle the chaos of my apartment. Between work and my growing apathy for housekeeping, the place had become a cluttered mess. Empty takeout containers balanced on the coffee table, old magazines covering the kitchen counter, and the kitchen junk drawer had become a black hole of forgotten items. I started with the kitchen, threw out expired condiments from the fridge, scrubbed the sticky residue off the counters, and finally faced the infamous junk drawer. Dead batteries, pins that didn't work, a single shoelace without its pair, and then there it was, a lottery ticket. I held it between my fingers, the paper slightly wrinkled and the edges worn from months of neglect. My parents' special graduation gift. I almost laughed remembering Mom's words. You never know. Yeah, right, I muttered. But curiosity is a stubborn thing. I grabbed my phone and opened the state lottery website. The numbers were printed on the back of the ticket. 08, 15, 27, 34, 42, 56. I entered the numbers, hit check results, and waited. Congratulations. Jackpot winner. $134 million. I blinked at the screen. That couldn't be right. I hit refresh. Same result. I checked the numbers again, reading each digit aloud. 08, 15, 27, 34, 42, 56. Exact match. This can't be, I whispered. My heart raced as adrenaline coursed through me. I rubbed my eyes, thinking maybe the lack of sleep from my double shifts was playing tricks on me. But the numbers didn't lie. $134 million. Panic set in. My hands trembled as I placed the ticket on the counter like it might explode. What was I supposed to do now? Who do you call when you win a fortune out of nowhere? I paced around the room, my heart pounding. I knew people's lives changed overnight, but this was absurd. Yesterday, I was scrounging for coins in the couch to buy coffee from the vending machine. Today, apparently, I was a multimillionaire. Questions flooded my mind. Do I tell anyone? Call a lawyer? How do you claim this kind of money? And then the darkest thought hit me. What would my family do if they found out? I picked up the ticket again, staring at the numbers. My phone buzzed with a text from Jason. Hey bro, can you help me move some patio furniture next weekend? We just bought a new set. Mom and Dad love it. I clenched my jaw. Jason was probably sitting in his perfectly furnished house, bought with my parents' money, oblivious to the fact that his younger brother had just stumbled upon a fortune. I put the ticket back in the drawer, this time under a pile of random receipts. My mind raced as I imagined the scenarios. My parents' sudden interest, Jason's fake enthusiasm, the endless ways they could manipulate me into sharing the winnings. I sat at my rickety kitchen table and opened my laptop. Google became my best friend that morning. What to do after winning the lottery was my first search. The results overwhelmed me. Hire a financial advisor. Stay anonymous if possible. Avoid large purchases too soon. I took notes like a college student studying for finals. Don't post online. Talk to a lawyer. Taxes. So many taxes. My stomach growled, but I couldn't eat. The figure of $134 million danced before my eyes like a neon sign. My phone buzzed again, this time with a notification from the family group chat. Jason and Amanda's latest selfie at brunch with Mom and Dad. The caption read, "Family time. Blessed." I turned off my phone and shoved it into the couch cushions. This money could change my life, but if my family found out, it could also destroy what little peace I had left. I had no idea what would happen next, but I knew one thing for sure. This ticket wasn't leaving the drawer anytime soon. The lottery ticket stayed buried in my junk drawer for 3 more days before I finally worked up the courage to do something about it. Every time I walked past the kitchen, I felt its presence like a ticking time bomb. One night, I dreamed that Jason found it and showed up at my apartment with balloons and a smile, saying, "Thanks for the gift, little bro." I woke up drenched in sweat. I knew I couldn't handle this alone, so I did what any overwhelmed millennial would do. I Googled what to do if you win the lottery. After scrolling through a dozen clickbait articles promising 5 tips to stay rich forever, I found a list of certified financial advisors. I chose one named Carol because she had the best reviews and a friendly smile in her profile photo. Sitting in Carol's office was surreal. The place smelled of lemon cleaner and success. Her desk was sleek, her coffee maker fancier than anything I'd ever seen. She listened to my story with a calm, professional nod, occasionally taking notes. The first rule, she said, is don't tell anyone. Not your friends, not your family, no one. People change when they hear about money. That won't be a problem, I said, thinking of my parents and Jason. Over the next few weeks, Carol helped me open new bank accounts and set up an LLC to claim the prize anonymously. She explained taxes, investments, and the importance of living below my means. Lottery winners go broke all the time, she said. Let's make sure that doesn't happen to you. The day I picked up the check was the strangest day of my life. I walked into the lottery office in jeans and a hoodie, my heart pounding. The security guard looked me up and down, then smiled when I handed him my ID. 20 minutes later, I had a check for $134 million in my hands. Well, after taxes, it was closer to $85 million. But still, the first thing I did was go home and stare at it. I almost expected it to disappear like a mirage. When it didn't, I made a promise to myself. I wouldn't waste it on nonsense. I'd be smart. So I started small. I paid off my student loans. Then I quit my job at the diner with an absurd sense of relief. My boss, Linda, patted me on the shoulder and said, "We'll miss you, kid. Don't forget about us when you're famous." I left her a $5,000 tip and walked out smiling. And I bought myself a car, not a flashy sports car, but a sleek black Tesla that felt like a spaceship when I drove it. When I pulled into the parking lot at my marketing job, my coworkers crowded around. "Dude, did you rob a bank?" one asked. I shrugged. Hard work pays off. But the house was my real indulgence. I found a modern, sun-drenched property in the suburbs, floor-to-ceiling windows, a pool, and a kitchen so pristine I felt guilty cooking in it. The icing on the cake? It was bigger and nicer than Jason's house. I moved in quietly. No housewarming party, no family announcements. My parents still believed I lived in that tiny downtown apartment, and honestly, I liked it that way. Most nights, I sat on my new patio with a beer in hand, watching the sunset. My phone would buzz occasionally with texts from Jason. "Need help picking a honeymoon spot? Got any ideas?" Or, "Mom says you never visit anymore. What's up?" I never responded. I wasn't bitter. I was just done. Money gave me freedom, no doubt, but it also gave me clarity. I didn't need their approval or their fake praise. For the first time in my life, I was living on my own terms. Still, every once in a while, I'd open the family group chat and scroll through the messages. Photos of Jason's wedding prep, Dad grilling steaks in the backyard, Mom gushing about the latest house renovation. I wondered if they'd notice if I disappeared completely. Then one night, while browsing real estate listings just for fun, I saw it. The property on the same street as Jason's house had just hit the market. Bigger yard, better views, double the price. I stared at the screen, my finger hovering over the schedule a viewing button. The temptation was intoxicating, because what better way to stay hidden than right under their noses? The next day, I drove to the property. It was perfect. A huge oak tree in the front yard, a wraparound porch, and enough distance from Jason's house to avoid run-ins, but close enough to keep tabs. As I sat in my Tesla, sipping coffee from the cup holder, I realized how absurd this was. A year ago, I was scraping coins from the couch to pay for gas. Now I was casually browsing for a house in Jason's neighborhood just to mess with him. I laughed out loud, startling a jogger passing by. Yeah, this was going to be interesting. The new house was everything I dreamed of and a bit more. Waking up to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, making coffee in a kitchen that could belong on a cooking show, and lounging on my wraparound porch with a craft beer became my new normal. I even bought a hammock for lazy afternoons when work didn't require my attention. For the first time in my life, I felt like I'd made it. But here's the thing about secrets. They never stay hidden for long. It started innocuously enough. One afternoon, while stocking the new outdoor fridge with drinks for me and precisely no guests, my phone buzzed. A text from an old high school friend. "Jake, dude, I just saw you in a sick Tesla near Oak Crest. New car." I froze. Oak Crest was near my new neighborhood. A neighborhood my family didn't know I lived in. I brushed it off with a vague response. "Yeah, just upgraded. Life's been treating me well." But the sinking feeling in my stomach intensified. The next day, I ran into Dan, my old neighbor from the downtown apartment. "Man, I didn't know you'd moved to the suburbs," he said, giving me a playful nudge. "New Tesla, fancy digs. Did you win the lottery or something?" I laughed, mumbling something about a better job and needing more space. But I could feel the walls closing in. Then came the call. "Hi, honey." Mom's voice crackled through the phone speaker one sunny Saturday morning. I almost dropped my coffee. We hadn't spoken in months. "Your father and I were just saying how much we miss you." "You miss me?" I said, my voice carefully neutral. "That's new." "Well," she choked, ignoring the jab. "We've heard you're doing really well. New car, nice house. We're so proud of you." Proud. The same people who gave me a lottery ticket instead of tuition money were suddenly proud. A knot in my stomach tightened. "How did you?" My voice trailed off. "Oh, Jason mentioned it," she said lightly. "Apparently, one of his friends saw you driving through Oak Crest. Isn't it funny how small the world is? How small the world is, or how big mouths are." The next call came that evening. "Mikey." Jason's voice boomed through the speaker like we were old buddies. "Man, we need to catch up. I heard you're doing pretty well lately. New car, nice house. We should grab a beer together." Jason didn't drink beer. He drank expensive cocktails with names like Smoky Elderflower Sunset. "I've been busy these days," I said, trying to sound casual. "Come on, man," he insisted. "Just one drink. We'll swing by your place. I heard it's pretty impressive." And there it was. They knew. Somehow, the secret I'd guarded so carefully had leaked out. Maybe I'd gotten too confident. Maybe that Tesla was too shiny. The house too nice. Word had spread, and now my family, who hadn't thought about me in years, was suddenly desperate to reconnect. The next morning, I found myself pacing through the immaculate kitchen. My phone buzzed again. "Mom, this time, let's have dinner soon. Your father's been talking about you nonstop." I opened the family group chat, the one I'd muted months ago. The most recent message was a photo of Jason standing in front of a huge oak tree with the caption, "Mikey's new neighborhood is nice. Maybe we should move here too." My blood ran cold. They weren't just curious. They were circling. I sat at the kitchen island, my mind racing. The coffee maker hissed behind me, filling the air with the rich aroma of my morning ritual. I barely noticed. My family had never shown interest in my life before. Now they were practically planning to move into my backyard. That afternoon, I called Carol, my financial advisor. "They know," I said, my voice tense. "Your family?" she asked. "Yes. I don't know how much, but they're snooping around." She sighed. "It happens more often than you think. Money does strange things to relationships. Stay calm. Stick to the plan. Whatever you do, don't let guilt make you backtrack." Easier said than done. I drove aimlessly for hours, ending up at a random diner off the highway. The waitress poured me coffee and asked if I wanted the pie special. "It's pecan," she said, "and it'll solve at least half your problems." I chuckled and ordered a slice. She was right. It didn't fix the family drama, but it reminded me of something important. I wasn't that overlooked kid anymore. I had options now, but the game had just changed, and I needed to be prepared. The invitation came via text from Mom. "Sunday dinner at Jason's house. We miss you so much. Please come." I stared at the message, drumming my fingers on the kitchen counter. My gut told me it was a trap, but curiosity won. I'd spent months dodging family calls, ignoring Jason's fake invitations, and living my best anonymous millionaire life. But maybe, just maybe, this was an olive branch. Sunday evening, I arrived at Jason's driveway. His house looked the same as always, meticulously landscaped, with a huge porch and that smug aura of "I didn't earn this." I parked my Tesla next to his SUV and walked to the front door, clutching a mid-priced bottle of wine I'd bought as a peace offering. "Mikey," Mom exclaimed as she opened the door, arms wide open. She hadn't called me that since middle school. She hugged me, patting my back with excessive enthusiasm. "Look at you, so grown up." Jason appeared behind her, grinning like he'd just won a game he hadn't played. "Hey bro, long time no see. Come in." The living room was just as I remembered. Family photos, a huge sectional couch, and that faint citrus scent of cleaning products. Dad was already seated at the dining table, scrolling through his phone. "Michael," he said with a nod, like we were cold co-workers at a board meeting. "Glad you came." Dinner started with the usual forced small talk. Jason bragged about his latest golf scores. Mom gushed about Amanda's wedding dress, and Dad mentioned his new barbecue equipment, top-of-the-line infrared burners. I chewed quietly, and the moment of truth arrived. It took exactly 20 minutes. "So," Mom said, setting down her fork and tilting her head, "we've been very curious. How have you been able to afford that beautiful house and that fancy car?" Silence. Even Jason paused mid-bite. My pulse quickened, but I forced a casual shrug. "I made some smart investments. Got into a startup early on. It did well. Now I receive regular dividends." Mom's eyes lit up like she'd just found a coupon for free designer handbags. "Really? Wow, that's amazing." Jason leaned forward. "Yeah, man, that's great. What's the company? Maybe I should invest too." "It's a niche thing," I said, sipping my water. "Experimental tech stuff." Jason nodded like he understood. He didn't. "You know," Mom said, her voice taking on that syrupy tone she used when asking for favors. "Jason's been thinking about expanding the house, adding a solarium, maybe a bigger garage." "Yeah," Jason chimed in. "We'd love to host more family gatherings." I saw where this was going. "It's so difficult these days," Mom continued, looking at Dad, who sighed on cue, "with construction costs and everything. But if we could get a little help, you know, from someone who's doing so well." Jason smiled. "We're family, after all." There it was, the pitch. I set down my fork, my appetite gone. The old me might have squirmed, given in, written a check just to keep the peace. But I wasn't that guy anymore. "I'll think about it," I said with a neutral smile. Mom clasped her hands together. "Oh, honey, that would mean so much to us." Jason clapped me on the back. "I knew we could count on you, bro." I excused myself shortly after, claiming an early morning meeting. Outside, I leaned against my car, breathing deeply. The night air was cool, but I felt hot with anger. As I drove away, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Thank you, honey. We're so proud of you. And remember, family comes first." I gripped the steering wheel. Family comes first. How funny. They finally had something they wanted from me, and suddenly we were family again. They thought I was still the same old Mikey, the guy who smiled through disappointment, who accepted hand-me-downs, who never complained. They had no idea who they were dealing with now. The next morning, I sat on my patio with a steaming cup of coffee, scrolling through real estate listings just for fun. My phone buzzed again. "Jason." I let it go to voicemail. I had a feeling this was just the beginning. 2 days after the dinner ambush, I received another text from Mom. "Dinner at our house again this Sunday. We have exciting plans to discuss. Can't wait to see you." I stared at the message, sipping my coffee on the patio of my new house. The sun was shining, birds were singing, and yet I felt a familiar tension creeping up my back. I knew what exciting plans meant, more financial plans that had nothing to do with me until now. I hesitated to ignore it, but curiosity won again. I needed to see how far they were willing to go. Sunday arrived, and I parked in Jason's driveway, observing the perfectly manicured lawn and the freshly washed SUV gleaming in the sun. I walked to the front door and rang the bell. Mom opened immediately, beaming like she'd won the neighborhood baking contest. "Mikey, I'm so glad you came. Come in." The dining table was already set with their best china. Jason was seated at the head of the table, grinning like a kid who knows he's about to get a new toy. Dad was was sitting next to him, phone in hand, looking up occasionally. Sit down, honey, Mom said, directing me to the chair across from Jason. The meal began with the usual small talk. Jason's new barbecue, Mom's latest kitchen gadget, Dad's golf game. I went along with it, pretending I didn't know what was coming. Halfway through dessert, a store-bought cheesecake with cherries on top. Mom clinked her fork against her glass. So, she began, looking at Jason. We wanted to share something exciting with you. Jason slid a folder across the table. Check it out, bro. I opened it to find a carefully written budget for $100,000. The header read, Solarium and Garage Expansion, Oakcrest. We thought, Mom said, clasping her hands, that since you've been doing so well with your investments, maybe you'd like to help your brother out. Yeah, Jason added. It's a solid investment. Adds value to the property. And hey, family sticks together, right? I closed the folder and set it aside. That's a lot of money. Well, Mom said quickly, it's not just for the house. We're also thinking about upgrading the wedding plans. Amanda now wants a destination wedding, something elegant. And you know, weddings are very expensive these days. Dad cleared his throat. We calculated that $100,000 would cover both. You calculated, I repeated, leaning back. They looked at each other and back at me. And now that you're doing so well, it's natural to want to help, Mom said. I let the silence stretch, watching their hopeful faces. The cheesecake tasted sour in my mouth. You mean like when Jason got a house and I got a lottery ticket? Or when he got a new car and I got a used bicycle with a flat tire? I finally said. Mom's smile faltered. That was different. Sure, I said, standing up. Here's the thing. You never helped me when I needed it. Now that I've achieved something on my own, you suddenly remember I exist. But we're family, Mom exclaimed, her voice breaking. I smiled. Well, no one's stopping you from working harder. Jason's face turned red. Come on, man. It's not like we're asking for much. $100,000 isn't much. I laughed. Must be nice to live in your world. Mom started crying softly, dabbing her eyes with a napkin. Dad just shook his head. Jason crossed his arms, sulking. We just thought, Mom whispered, that you'd want to share your success with your family. I picked up the folder and held it for a moment. You know what? I wanted that for years, but I finally realized something. Family isn't about money or guilt trips. It's about being there for each other when it matters. And you were never there for me. I dropped the folder on the table. Enjoy your dinner. I'm done. As I walked out, Jason muttered, selfish jerk. I stopped at the door, turned with a smile, and said, well, no one's stopping you from working harder. Outside, the air was cool and crisp. I stood by my car for a moment, breathing deeply. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Another text from Mom. I didn't need to read it. I blocked her number and drove home. The weight of years of disappointment finally lifted from my shoulders. Life without the constant weight of family manipulation felt like breathing fresh air for the first time. My days were mine. I woke up when I wanted, worked on projects I enjoyed, and traveled when I felt like it. No more guilt. No more passive-aggressive comments. Just freedom. I invested wisely, just as Carol advised. Real estate, blue-chip stocks, a couple of promising tech startups. The dividends came in steadily, funding weekend getaways to Napa Valley, spontaneous trips to New Orleans for jazz festivals, and a ski trip to Colorado where I discovered snowboarding was definitely not my thing. The new house became a sanctuary. I converted the guest room into a home theater, a patio into an outdoor lounge, and the garage into a mini gym. Most mornings, I sat on the deck with a steaming cup of coffee, watching the sunrise over the manicured lawns. The silence was beautiful. No texts from Mom, no fake invitations from Jason. Just me, the sound of birds, and the occasional hum of my neighbor's lawnmower. Without the family circus, I realized something unexpected. I was genuinely happy. I didn't feel lonely or resentful. I wasn't looking over my shoulder waiting for the next guilt-laden message. Turns out, cutting toxic ties isn't just therapeutic. It's absolutely liberating. Jason, meanwhile, hadn't changed one bit. I found out through mutual acquaintances that he was still living off Mom and Dad. They paid for the wedding, solarium expansion, and even covered his credit card debt when Amanda went on a shopping spree to treat herself. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. One crisp autumn afternoon, I ran into Jason downtown. I'd just finished a meeting with a potential business partner when I saw him across the street, standing in front of a coffee shop. He saw me too. Mikey, he shouted, crossing the street with that familiar swagger. Man, it's been forever. Yeah, I said, keeping my tone neutral. I've been busy. He looked at my tailored blazer and the watch on my wrist. I see that. You're all fancy now, huh? I shrugged. Just enjoying life. Must be nice, he said, shoving his hands in his pockets. You know, I still think it's unfair. I raised an eyebrow. What's unfair? That you got lucky, he said, gesturing to my car, a sleek electric SUV parked nearby. You didn't earn it. You just scratched a ticket. I smiled, shaking my head. Yeah, maybe I got lucky with the ticket, but everything else after that, I built it. I learned. I worked. I invested smartly. Jason scoffed. Still, life's unfair. You're right, I said, looking him in the eyes. Life is unfair. His expression faltered, as if realizing I wasn't agreeing with him the way he expected. I nodded and walked away, leaving him standing there. That night, I sat on my deck with a cup of coffee, the sky painted in shades of orange and pink. I leaned back in my chair, breathing in the fresh air. The past felt like a distant memory. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was free. Winning the lottery had given me money, sure, but the real prize? The freedom to live without the people who never valued me. Somewhere across town, Jason was probably complaining to Mom about how unfair life was, and I just smiled, smiled, sipped my coffee, and enjoyed the peace.